and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday, Thanksgiving Eve. That's right, my friends. This is the very first pre-Thanksgiving installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. Welcome, Ken.
Well, thanks. You know, the other day, you asked me if I wanted some business cards.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking that, yeah, maybe you should have some made up for me with the Cowboy State Politics logo.
Mm-hmm.
And then down there where you normally put the job title, just put insipid bombastic twit.
No, I'd have to make business cards for the entire cow pie if I did that, and some other folks in the so-called media. Well, welcome to the program, my friends. We've got kind of a different show today. Of course, it is the day before Thanksgiving, and what I always do on the podcast is as close to Thanksgiving as possible. I publish the Thanksgiving special, or the real story of Thanksgiving, the one that is very different than what you were told in school. And I mean, being where we are right now, I mean, we got a socialist in New York, we have a communist in New York, we have a socialist in Seattle, and there's probably some others elected elsewhere.
You got a couple in Cheyenne.
Well, there's a couple in Cheyenne. That's absolutely true.
Firmly convinced.
Well, I don't think that they hide it too well.
That never happens in Wyoming.
It doesn't happen here. What are you talking about? It's crazy talk. But, we do have some socialists, and, this is an experiment that just, I don't know. It's one of those things that just never dies. It doesn't matter how spectacularly it fails. We humans stupidly think that, we didn't do it right last time. We'll tweak it a little bit, and maybe it'll be different. And it never is. It wasn't from the very beginning, and it certainly isn't now.
So government messed up healthcare, so the answer is more government.
Yes. Well, that's what we heard yesterday during the interview with Josh Durrell, is that, and this is, Ken, all right, every time I do an interview, it takes me a little bit to kind of work back through how things went down, the conversations that happened. And that's definitely the case with the interview yesterday. And I've been going back and forth on what the headline for the podcast episode should be, because I'm going to publish that interview today on the podcast. And I'm thinking that it should be Wyoming Business Council, the free market is broken. Or it could be that you can't start a business without government, which that's one of the big themes that I heard yesterday. I don't know if that came through clear to you or not, but that was one of the big things that I came away with.
Yeah, if we didn't go out and offer all of these carrots to these organizations, there's no way they'd ever showed up here on the
No, they wouldn't do that.
And I loved Mark's point about we don't necessarily want to bring people in here that think that they need a government handout to operate. We want people here that want to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you set up the right environment, you have the least amount of regulations possible. You have the least amount of taxation possible. And it's you've got enough people to run your business. There is no reason why a business would not move to your
Well,
community.
for proof, look at New York. How long was New York a hellhole for business? Still is.
For a long
Yeah.
time.
And it's only
It is
now,
now too.
even Rush himself stuck it out in New York for quite a while. Sean Hannity stuck it out in New York because they wanted to be in New York City.
Yes.
At some point, it wasn't worth it anymore. So I don't think you have to have all of those carrots to dangle to bring people in. I think you put a good business-friendly environment up, and
Well, and that's what, yesterday I had to go set up an account for the Open Range Record, which I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I was talking about 30 North Gould with the bank official that I was talking. His name is Justin. And because there was an article in the Sheridan Press about some complaints that had been leveled, more complaints that have been leveled against 30 North
did
Gould.
Patrick write that one?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, anyway, I got contacted about that too.
Yeah, I'm sure. And the conversation was, okay, well, if you're going to have LLC and business laws that are favorable to business, you have to take the good with the bad. And a lot of the bad happens at 30 North Gould. But interestingly enough, Secretary of State Chuck Gray told me that over 40% of Wyoming's businesses are registered at that one address. Now, that means profitable ones. It also means kind of more sinister ones or ones that are kind of fake. But you got to take the good with the bad. And, when we get in positions of power like, being the head of the Wyoming Business Council, we tend to think that we can manipulate the market into what we want it to be. And the truth is you can't.
Yeah, I don't know that he gave you a number at one point. He gave me, and I'd be remiss to try to repeat it. But the amount of income that comes in through that one address for the state,
it's gigantic.
Staggering.
Yeah, it is an amazing amount of money that, and like I said, over 40% of the state's business comes through there. So anyway, I mean, the long and the short of this is that I think yesterday's interview was the classic struggle between command and control economies and people that believe in that versus folks that believe in the free market and supply side economics. And, one of those historically works. The other one doesn't and ends up losing money. And, when you look at the track record of the Wyoming Business Council, it's not good, my friends. Okay, so maybe there has been, a moderate success here or there, but overall, it's really been a negative. In fact, the GDP of Wyoming has gone down in the entire time that thing has been in existence. So anyway, on today's podcast, which should be published, I'm thinking about noon, it's going to be that interview with Josh Durrell. And it is, I got to tell you, my friends, it is one of the more interesting interviews I think that we've done. And another surprising thing, Ken, is the longer that I do this program, the more I am convinced that the political arguments never really change. They're always the same argument. Okay, they're wrapped in different wrapping paper for the season, but when you boil it all down, it's the same thing. It's freedom versus versus control, free market economics versus command and control. I mean, it's all the same.
God said there's nothing new under the sun. He's had the same philosophical arguments with man and with Satan.
Oh,
forever.
yeah. And just think about socialism, right? Today, when we get to the real story of Thanksgiving, really, it's a story of the triumph of capitalism over socialism. And, I mean, it's one of the really first examples of it, at least in this country anyway.
Unless you happen to be a turkey.
Yeah. Did you watch? Man, I should have recorded this episode. Did you see Trump's pardoning of the turkey?
No, I missed that. I don't have access to TV, which is a blessing.
Well, that's true. When you walk in Agent 29's house, it's unlike. Well, first of all, it's a very pretty house. It's a historic house in Wyoming, but unlike most homes that have a big TV that's prominently displayed in the living room, there isn't one of those in Ken's house. Of course, he has his office where, there's a big giant monitor in there, but no TV.
That's only because I can't see little ones.
You don't want to have one of those giant magnifying glasses? All right, my friend. So the game plan for this morning is there's a couple things in the news that I want to go through, so we'll do that. And then we're probably at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to open up the phone lines since we haven't done that for a while. And if there's something that's on your mind that you want to talk about, we'll open the phone lines up at about 8:30, and we'll just leave them open for the entire program. There might be some folks that want to opine about yesterday's interview or Thanksgiving or whatever. And so, if you are listening, one thing that I want to hear, if you want to call into the show, is let's talk about one of your favorite Thanksgiving traditions that you have with your family.
Yeah, just don't get mushy.
Yeah, well, mushy like the mashed potatoes. You cook them too long and they just turn to sand. All right, my friends, on with the program. Now, this is one that we have not been able to do for a while. From the Pravda on the Platte. In an article entitled...
You gotta tone that one back a bit there, buddy.
Yeah, that one's a little hot. But, hey, why not get your attention when we're talking about communism?
Holy cow.
Further, in an article entitled Further Property Tax Cuts Would Force Local Budget Cuts. And I quote, property tax relief this year forced some towns and cities across the state to make tough choices, and the possible elimination of all residential property taxes would turn up the heat on municipalities. The Wyoming Legislature's Joint Revenue Committee recently advanced a constitutional measure that would eliminate residential property taxes and an accompanying bill increasing the statewide sales tax to make up for some of that lost revenue. The proposed constitutional amendment states, quote, the percentage of value prescribed for residential real property shall be 0, and no property tax shall be assessed on residential real property. This measure would put to a statewide vote if signed into law. Now, the bump to the sales and use tax would bring the statewide sales tax up to 6%. Cue the sky is falling, Chicken Little, the world is coming to an end, apocalypse now type of talk. Now, of course, when the 25% reduction was passed last year, that was Senate File 69, you would have thought that every city, every town, every county in Wyoming would cease to exist. And the truth is, most counties don't get most of the revenue from residential property taxes.
So was it Casper that decided we're going to make this hurt? We
Yes.
can't have Christmas lights.
That's exactly what they did. I mean, the very same thing that... do you remember when there was a government shutdown and Obama closed the national monuments? It's too much money to have pieces of concrete out where people could go visit the memorial. Nope, closed it down because of the government shutdown. Well, Casper did the very same thing. They're not going to light as many Christmas trees this year. Now, the truth is, most cities and towns in Wyoming, and counties for that matter, did not experience the giant cut that we were all told. During the legislative session, the fire department in Cheyenne encircled the Capitol building with fire trucks. They had firemen in the gallery almost the entire, during the entire duration of the debate on that bill. But the truth is, in fact, I don't think there was a single county that took more than a 10% cut. I mean, Agent 29, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
No, I don't think any of them took 10.
No, I think most of them were single digits and low single digits. I did, a couple of years ago, I did an episode entitled 50% Really Equals 10%. Now, the episode is about the ballot initiative that's going to be on the 2026 ballot for a 50% reduction in property taxes. But when you do the math, that only means at most a 10% reduction in total county revenue for all the counties. And the truth is, most of them, I think here in Sheridan, it was like 2.5%, 3%, something like that.
Yeah, what you can't lose sight of is the people we gave. I didn't do that.
I did. I hit a key.
the people we give a break to, that's primary residential property tax. So when you say we gave a 25% property tax cut, that's a misnomer.
It is. It is.
Yeah, we gave a small subsection of those property taxpayers a little bit of a break, which ended up being 4 or 5%, I think at most, for almost any entity.
Yeah, and there were some counties where it was a ridiculously low number, like 70 grand they lost or 35 grand.
And I think it's fair to point out, too, that those of us in the House said that, because we're making the decision at this level, and they didn't do so at the counties and at the cities, that we should give at least a portion of that back and try to backfill it and take on that burden of adjusting ourselves. It would have given us excuse to cut something else somewhere else. But no, the Senate would have none of that.
Well, and the truth of the matter, Ken, is that there is not a budget in this world that couldn't sustain even a 10% cut. I mean, people lose their jobs all the time. Families, lose part of their income. And so what do? You adjust. And you take out those things that are luxuries that you can do without.
The problem with that argument is that it gets turned back around on the little old ladies living on a single income.
Sure.
And at some point, 10% is more than you can handle, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a government agency out there that's even close.
But see, then, well, there's also a flaw in that argument, too, because if our property taxes were not as high as they are right now, that little old lady that, is actually waiting tables at Perkins, she wouldn't have to do that because she's not paying a huge percentage of her income just to keep her house. And frankly, I think that's wrong anyway. And, part of the podcast episode on Monday was how absolutely wrong it is to tax people out of their home. I mean, you never really own your home right now. You're constantly renting from the government. And what happens when you don't pay your rent? Well, you get kicked out. Same thing with your property taxes. You don't pay your property taxes, your house is sold on the steps of the courthouse. And actually, there's in Buffalo, that's actually how it happens. The auction happens right there on the steps. But back to the Pravda on the Platte. I think that you're going to love this one, Ken.
I just wanted you to hear how it should be.
Well, I got your attention the first time. And I quote, mayors from across Natrona County discussed the impacts of property tax changes in their communities during a panel at the Natrona County Republican Women's Meeting on November 20th. The property tax relief this year was, quote, significant, but it wasn't significant enough that it was going to put bar none in the red, Mayor Peter Boyer said. For the town of nearly 3,000, the decrease in revenue meant hiring one fewer police officer as bar none works to establish its own police department. Quote, it's been difficult to get through, but on the other side of that, it is that the necessity is the mother of all invention, Boyer noted. We've tried to do the best we can to basically adopt the situation and overcome. All right, there's another flaw with this because cities do not get most of their money from property taxes. Most of the revenue that comes from that goes to municipalities comes from sales tax. It's two different critters. Now, the county, on the other hand, the county gets, most of its revenue from property taxes, but only a small percentage of that is residential. One more quotation from the Pravda. Quote, no jobs have been cut, Ray Pacheco said. The Parks and Recreation has taken the biggest hit only because we want to make sure that we protect positions and jobs. Evansville had to pause its plan to replace old equipment in the fire department and public works, but did not have to cut any staff positions. Mayor Ernie Blackford said, quote, the property taxes don't hit us the same way it does a school district or the county. Mills Mayor Leo Juarez said, being smaller, we get a smaller portion of the already small piece of the pie. That's because the town of Mills is not very big, and if you look at the total amount of sales tax that little town generates, it's not very much. And so, you're not going to get that much revenue. But the point is that we do have a problem with property taxes. We still have a problem with property taxes, though it's on the road to being fixed. And, the more I think about it, I think that property taxes are absolutely immoral. That one of the natural rights of men is the ability to own property. And if you cannot own property, you are no more than a serf or a peasant. One of the very things that generated, that sparked, that was the impetus behind the Magna Carta was the ability to own property. And if you read John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, he'll tell you that one of the three main natural rights of man are life, liberty, and property. And in fact, in the Constitution, the way it was originally written was not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was life, liberty, and property. But that was changed because they knew if property was in the word property was in the Constitution, the southern states would say, "See, all of those slaves, they're our property. We have a right to them." So that's why it was changed. But if you don't own your property, you're really not free. And secondarily, I think that a consumption tax is by far the fairest one. If you don't want to pay more taxes, consumption tax is a sales tax. If you don't want to pay more taxes, don't spend more money. That's the way to control it. And it's entirely voluntary. And okay, so I'll admit that there are some things you have to buy, food, but in Wyoming we don't tax food. There's electricity, there is water, but a lot of those services we don't tax in Wyoming.
Did you see Senator Slither's message about we don't tax food?
Nuh-uh. No.
Oh, I have to share that later sometime.
All right, maybe we'll dig it up. Maybe we can find it. And here's the other thing too. One of the things that you legislators are going to have to watch out for is some of the more liberal redcoats trying to increase the amount of services that are taxed in Wyoming. In Wyoming, we only tax, and by services I mean like your lawn care, advertising. There's a whole bunch of them that we don't assess a sales tax to. Well, it is the favorite ploy of Steve Harshman to increase the amount of services that we tax. You see, in Wyoming, we tax about 50 different services. There are other states like Texas. I mean, I think we could all probably agree that Texas is one of the more freer states. Well, they tax over 200 services, and so one of the tricks that the redcoats and the Democrats are going to try to pull during this budget session is to, and I mark my words, I'll lay money on it. I got you $1. We'll lay money on it. One of the things they're going to try to pull is to increase the amount of services that are taxed. So, conservatives, you're going to have to keep your eyes peeled for that one because I am positive that that's going to happen. And the argument will be made, we don't have enough revenue now. These poor cities and towns, they're going to cease to exist and they're going to turn into dust. And so we have to tax services.
Bye.
Well, and again, this goes back to our discussion of the free market, that if a town or community can't sustain itself, then, well, I mean, it's just like any business, right? If a business isn't making money, it deserves to go out of business. I mean, that's the nature of the free market. You either expand and improve your services or you cease to exist.
That's the point that Representative Bear was trying to make a year or two ago, and
he could have done so a little more artfully. He's been pilloried over it.
Yeah, he's been raked over the coals pretty hard for that. But I lived in a lot of those. I lived in Shell.
Shell's a small
lived
place.
In 10 Sleep. Some other places like that.
Otto. Wait, no, Otto really doesn't exist anymore.
I didn't live there.
No, you never lived in Otto?
No, I was the bookkeeper. Oh, that was Manderson. Sorry.
Which means you were fishing all the time. But, the way that Bear should have explained that argument is, 100 years ago, probably 100 years ago, maybe a little bit more, just about every town had a stable, right? You ride into town and you don't want to take your horse everywhere, so you go check him into the stable, and then the stable owner takes care of your horse. Well, you don't see those very often because most people don't ride horses into town. You don't have the job of stagecoach driver no longer exists because we all have cars.
Whale oil salesman and distributor.
There you go. Right. So if your industry does not innovate, if you don't expand, if you don't offer new products, if you don't change with the times and offer the services that are in demand, your business is going to cease to exist. And that's the nature of the free market. And again, back to yesterday's interview, that was one of the main arguments that I think Josh Durrell was making. Oh, as government, we have to make sure that these businesses don't go out of business. We have to have businesses.
You said something that kind of reminded me. We a lot of times think, just as Josh pointed out, they couldn't possibly survive without government.
Yeah, no, it can't happen. No.
Worland was originally built on the other side of the river.
Yes.
And when they heard that the railroad was coming through on the other side of the river, they waited till February and they jacked up all of the houses and put them on skis and slid them across the river.
Right.
People are pretty resilient when they have to rely on themselves to do things. And I think that's something that we have a tendency to overlook or that we've lost in Wyoming. We've lost that frontier attitude. Get
Self-reliance.
it done, self-reliance. And look, along with that, look out for your neighbor.
I agree.
I've mentioned recently my granddad when he would go for a pack trip for a month or so in the Bighorns, he would leave the garage open so that if any of his neighbors needed to borrow something, they
You might
had
need
access.
a tool.
Yeah, that's a different culture.
It is. And I'm awfully, as a historian, I'm one of these people that, I kind of lament the the traditions that we had that go by the wayside. And, just take my own neighborhood. I know my neighbor across the street only because I watch all the shenanigans that happen at their house. But if I were to walk up and down the street, I bet I don't know any more than 3 or 4 of them. And it used to be you knew all your neighbors, right? You go over and say, "Hey, let's grill some burgers and hang out on the front lawn and make fun of the neighbor across the street." But we don't do that anymore. And I think that it's a result of being disconnected, and these things probably don't help the matter at all. So anyway, my friend, we've gone way off topic, but it's Thanksgiving Eve. We can do whatever we want. So in the spirit of that, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what happened to dressing up, style, being looking good when you go out. We're going to talk about that next. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. I mean, fast. Frankly, it's expanding faster than I ever thought it would. You can listen to the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can find it on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Amazon, iTunes. There's a whole bunch of them. In fact, you can probably find the podcast just about anywhere that you look. Also, don't miss the live program, which is published every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 10. I shouldn't say every one of them because we're not working on tomorrow, and we're not working Friday because it's Thanksgiving.
I'm not working today.
Well, you're not. Well,
I'm
do
just
you ever
having
work?
a ball.
I mean, do you ever work aside from toting around 5 reams of paper?
No. Oh, the budget. 4,800 pages.
4,800 pages worth of a budget. And the question you might be asking is the budget always that big? And the answer, my friends, is no, it's not. And my advice to conservatives and everybody in the House, if you value your seat, your ability to get reelected, the answer you should give to the governor's budget request is no. Not only no, but still no. Nope, heck no. Not doing it. Take this back and maybe, start a fire like you liberals do with ballots.
Holy crap, they're not getting the message.
No, holy crap, they're not getting the message. All right, my friends. Well, I've opened up the phone lines. If you want to be part of today's show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the phone number here in the studio. And I'm sure Ken will throw it up on the screen just in case you've forgotten about it. So have you noticed that people don't really dress as nice as they used to? I mean, all you got to do is go to Walmart, late in the afternoon or in the evening. And that is an experience, especially if it's later on at night. People wandering around in their pajamas and their slippers, and kind of makes you wonder maybe if we should pass a law. You might write this on your list, Ken. Maybe we should pass a law that some kinds of clothing should not be made in a specific style. I'm just saying.
No spandex past, say, a lady's size 8.
Yeah, I don't know. But even we can go bigger than that. But there's some of, it's just an experience. And if you've never done that before, go to Walmart later at night and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But it's not just Walmart. When you look at pictures of Sheridan, 30, 40 years ago, the folks walking down the street, they're actually dressed pretty nice. A lot of the men are in suit and coats and ties and maybe wearing a hat. But now you don't see that.
Yeah, my grandparents lived in Bighorn, and whenever we came, about once a week, we'd come into Sheridan, and it was a half a day affair.
Yeah, that was an event.
And the first 2 or 3 hours were done at the house with my grandmother getting their hair put together, picking out the right clothes. My granddad usually wore a coat and tie.
Yeah, well, it was different, right? And it's, I don't know if I've told you, my friends, but I teach a group of homeschoolers about debate. So we have got this little class once a week. And part of yesterday's lesson was first impressions. That when somebody meets you, they form their first impression within about 20 to 30 seconds of whatever happens. And 90% of what somebody remembers about you, it comes from their first impression. And so if the very first time you meet somebody, they're in a faded, crappy T-shirt with ripped up jeans and you're wearing slippers, that's what they're going to remember about you. And, think about job interviews. I've talked to a couple of business owners that tell me that, interviews have changed and that some people show up and they're not dressed up at all. That it's, a T-shirt and jeans or a hooded sweatshirt and jeans. No offense, Agent 29. But most people have lost the ability to dress up. And a good example of that is what the transportation. Here we go. Yeah. So, this is kind of is that a picture? No, it's a painting, isn't it? Or a drawing.
No, that's a picture that's a Mint Bar before they put up the current sign.
Yeah.
That's in Sheridan.
Okay, so you get the point, right? Most people dressed up to go out. And yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, had a lecture, kind of a lecture, for everybody going to an airport. From Breitbart News, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy urges travelers to, quote, dress a little better and be polite on flights. And I quote, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy urged travelers to practice civility and dress a little bit better in airports and on planes, as what officials predict will be the busiest recorded Thanksgiving travel week that we've had. Speaking with reporters at New Jersey's Newark Liberty International Airport on Monday, Duffy warned of packed airports and long TSA lines ahead of the holiday. But I think that we have to think about, how do we do a better job, he suggested. Maybe we should say please and thank you to our pilots and to our flight attendants. Duffy suggested that passengers dressing a little better would encourage better behavior. I think I call it just maybe dressing with some respect, he said. You know, whether it's a pair of jeans and a decent shirt, I would encourage people to maybe dress a little better, which encourages us to maybe behave a little bit better. Here's a video of Sean Duffy at that press conference. Go ahead and play it for us, Ken.
Ourselves, not just our families, but we think about those who are around us. And we call our better angels. In a busy time, and again, the airports are going to be packed. TSA lines may be a little longer. And as you might not be able to find a seat as you're by your gate because of the number of flights that are going out or coming in. But I think we have to think about, how do we do a better job? How do we, maintain maybe some of that frustration we have as we travel this Thanksgiving season? Maybe we should say please and thank you to our pilots and to our flight attendants. I think, again, I call this just maybe dressing with some respect. Whether it's a pair of jeans and a decent shirt, I would encourage people to maybe dress a little better, which encourages us to maybe behave a little better. Let's try not to wear slippers and pajamas as we come to the airport. I think that's positive. If we can help someone as we're getting on the aircraft that might need some help putting their bag in the overhead bin, and you're a little stronger, a little buffer, you've been lifting.
This is the part I
stand up
agree.
and
You're stronger, a little buffer.
You can put it up for someone who's having a more difficult time. Common courtesy and civility, I think, is going to work well. And I'd ask you to please be patient with our TSA and our gate agents. And again, they're working their hearts out to make sure that this is the best experience possible for you and the safest experience possible for you. And again, a little gratitude goes a long way. And if we all do that, I think we're going to have a far better travel season. And by the way, we're going to get to our families on Thanksgiving with a lot better attitude.
Okay, so, maybe dress a little bit better, treat each other with a little bit of respect, which you should be doing anyway, unless, of course, you're advocating for socialism, in which case we can have a civil argument, which we did yesterday. But, as I told my students yesterday, when you dress up, you feel better. You think that you look better, and hopefully you probably do, and it changes your attitude a little bit, and it changes how you carry yourself. And it also changes people's impression of you, that if you dress a little bit better, it tells people, subconsciously, most likely, that, hey, this person actually cares about their experience, or about their appearance. And that if you show up to your relative's house in a trashed t-shirt and a ripped up pair of jeans and dirty tennis shoes that have grass stains on them, it doesn't really tell your mother-in-law that you respect her house or you respect her efforts in the kitchen. Why not just put on a nicer shirt?
My dad was always a stickler for getting dressed up to go to church.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was kind of silly because God sees you all the time, But he says it just shows respect. He says when you if you're going to be invited to the governor's mansion, you're probably not going to show up in a T-shirt and baggy pants.
Yeah, you better not, right? You should at least put on a coat and tie. But it's not just, airports and, holiday dinners at the in-laws' house. We've seen this same phenomenon a lot of other places. Let me give you an example here. Let's see here. Slideshow. Let's look at this, Ken. Oh, not that one. We'll get to that a little bit later. There we go. That's the one I was looking at. There's your head coach, Ken, Sean Payton there on the left. And then Cowboys coach on the right.
And you could have picked some even more drastic examples than that. I mean, nobody is going to look at Sean today and say, oh, you look like a slob. But, yeah, your point is well taken.
I mean, there's a big difference there, isn't there?
Yeah, that was the man there.
Yeah, well, and, you dress up and you put a suit and tie on. And It's you have respect for what you're doing, and you respect yourself too.
When I don't know whether it was still the case when you were there, but when I was in high school, if you were on a Friday and you were on the basketball
You had
team
to
or the
dress up,
football
yep.
team or whatever, you come in with a coat and tie, at
That's
least
exactly
with a
right.
tie.
And even some professional sports leagues, I can't remember which ones, but I think it was the NBA, or maybe the NFL. I don't know, but some leagues have passed rules that when you're traveling, you have to dress up. That it's not the baggy shorts and gigantic T-shirt on, but you show a little respect for the people that are paying their hard-earned money to come see you.
We have the same thing, as you're well aware of, on the floor of the House, floor of the
Yes.
Senate. There's a certain, which gets a little lax on Friday. And I remember before I was even elected, I remember good old Landon Brown showed up in a purple velvet suit.
Well, that was on Halloween.
Yeah. Um, okay, I cut you a little slack for that. But now it's gotten to the point that I don't know. To me, it's pushing it.
Didn't you get reprimanded once for wearing a black pair of jeans?
Yeah, several of us did. You're not supposed to wear denim, and we had some, basically brand new, nice denim jeans, and several of us were doing that and had been doing it. And finally, somebody complained about it, so we had to go in slacks. And the main thing is when you're walking from the frat house where I live during those sessions, those slacks are not warm enough.
Well, and where you stay at is not very far from the Capitol. It's less
Right.
than a block, but still, I can tell you, Cheyenne in February and March is a screaming blizzard.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so the question is, Ken, why do those decorum rules exist? Why is it? Why can't we just say, hey, you can wear your jeans and a T-shirt on the House floor?
Well, you touched on it earlier. Is you do feel different when you're dressed differently, and other people treat you differently, and it just helps encourage a respectful back and forth.
Sure, right. So it's the place that you're at, the activity that you're doing, the people you represent, and I got to tell you, my friends, if my representative shows up, going door to door, and he's in trashy clothes, it's probably going to change my impression of him.
Well, our favorite Democrat senator with his hoodie.
Yeah, John Fetterman.
Yeah.
And he's kind of made that his trademark, but still there are pictures of him sitting in his office in Washington D.C. and he's got the beautiful desk and the nice office all around him. Here he is in a hooded sweatshirt and shorts. And now I can understand if it's on a Saturday and you're just on your off time and you're working. I get that. But when you're meeting people that you want to respect you, well, maybe you ought to change your clothes. And I think we should just get back to it. I see no reason why we can't up our game a little bit. And even if we disagree with people, and perhaps this is the most important point, that we can treat each other with civility, right? You don't always have to have the red alert sirens blazing, yelling at people like you do on Facebook. It's very different when you're sitting in front of somebody having a conversation. A good example of that is the interview we did with Mike Yen and Carly Provenza. Now, the entire time that they were in the studio, I think that Carly Provenza was snarling at me. But she was still, it's very clear that we're not going to be pals. But it was very clear that she realized where we were, and that we needed to have a cordial conversation. And it was live, so
Yeah.
it's not like...
And it's respect for the process.
Sure.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we should all get back to it, up our game a little bit, dress a little bit better. And for God's sake, when you're going through the airport, let's try to keep control of your temper a little bit.
Yeah, make sure you wear good socks because you still have to take your boots off.
Well, you do have to take your boots off, and you don't want, holes in your socks. But so I think to solve that, you should just order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep your feet nice and warm. And, on the toes, they have this cool little buffalo that's stitched into the socks. I'm being entirely serious. If you want a good pair of socks, they're absolutely amazing. All right, moving on. Now, Zoran Mondani, he said that he was going to get control of rent, that he was going to make sure that we had affordable housing. We've heard that drumbeat in Wyoming. In fact, there's a giant, I don't know if it's a scandal yet, but it's getting pretty close to it, about the affordable housing scam. And it is a scam. There's plenty of evidence to support that. But in New York City, they don't really have a housing shortage, believe it or not. From the Free Press, why New York City has 50,000 ghost apartments. Now, New York City is a city of 7 million people, so maybe 50,000 isn't that many, but still 50,000 empty apartments. Quote, not long after COVID ended, a tenant in one of the Manhattan buildings passed away. And this is written by a guy named Matt Miller, so he wrote it in the first person. He was an elderly Italian immigrant who lived alone in a small studio apartment near Gramercy for decades. These things happen in the course of life, and there's always a story. Now, normally, it doesn't take too long for landlords like me to renovate an empty apartment and list it on Street Easy so that new people can move in and start the next chapter of their lives. But since this particular apartment is rent stabilized, laws that were passed in 2019 essentially prevent me from doing anything with it except shutting the door and keeping it empty. Strict limits on rent increases under the 2019 laws have left an estimated 50,000 apartments like mine vacant across the city because the restrictions on what landlords can charge for these apartments often don't even cover the costs of maintaining them. So they become ghosts. It's like they don't exist at all. So if you can't pay to update it, to do the maintenance, well, it costs you money to rent it. And so why not just leave it vacant? Incoming New York City Mayor Zoran the Communist Mamdani promised during his campaign to, quote, immediately freeze the rent for rent-stabilized apartments. But those rents have essentially been frozen since 2019. At the time, the laws were wildly heralded as the strongest set of rent regulations anywhere in America, and were specifically designed to protect tenants from price gouging and the threat of displacement after decades of gentrification. But sometimes people die, as was the case with my tenant, and his apartment wasn't exactly all you need to do is bring your toothbrush move-in condition. He'd lived there since 1984. Now, to get an apartment like this one into good shape after just a long occupancy requires renovations, and renovations cost money, and money is something you can't make that easily in New York. However, the rent laws allow only between, and listen to this, 1/144th and 1/180th of what you spend on improvements to be added to the monthly rent, and only on the first 20 to 30,000 to 50,000 of costs. The exact calculations and every dollar limits vary, but rent-stabilized landlords can only break even on some portion of their renovation expenses 12 to 15 years down the road. Now think about this. Ken, you're a carpenter. And so this question is directed right at you. If you're going to take a simple one-bedroom apartment and you're going to update the kitchen, and I'm not talking about the appliances, we'll just leave those out. But if you're going to update the cabinetry and, work on the trim and patch any holes in the apartment, just rough from the hip number, what are we talking?
Well, a lot of it, what's the level of trim, what kind of cabinets you're
Sure.
putting in. But if you're doing it for a rental, it's probably going to be the cheapest thing you can get. So you're not going to be able to do it much cheaper than about 25 grand.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon when we do nice kitchens for them to be 200,000.
Yeah. I mean, carpentry work, updating, renovations, they're not cheap. And, when you start adding up, all the little numbers add up to big numbers. The apartment building I used to live in Buffalo, when I was talking to the landlord, I said, well, how much do you dump into each apartment when you're fixing it? And he said, his answer was, an apartment like yours, where nothing is damaged, I still have to dump 5,000 to 10,000 into it. And that's to update the bathroom. And, I lived there for, I don't know, six years-ish. And so, a lot of things change in that amount of time. And the appliances, you add those on top, you're probably talking $2,000 for a stove, probably $2,000 for a refrigerator, maybe a little bit less. And so those numbers add up. But in New York, you can only increase the rent 1/144th and 1/180th of what you spent. So if you're going to spend $20,000, you can't even add 1% to the price of the rent. How on earth are you possibly going to make your money back? And the truth is that renting, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. I mean, that's a long-term investment because the return on investment is not that great. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have the term slumlord, the guy that rents apartments but doesn't fix them up. And it's, it's because some people are dirtbags, but it's because the cost of renovation is so high. And when you've got a giant apartment building where people are coming and going a lot, that money kind of going out the door pretty fast.
Well, that's one of the reasons that the only answer then is government. Right, right, because with government,
prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
Exactly. And that's the argument that was made during the interview yesterday. But the truth is that problem is created by government. If you allow the free market to operate, it works on supply and demand. And if you have a low supply of housing, well, then you can charge a little bit more because, those rentals are kind of hard to come by. So you charge a little bit more. When there's a dearth of, that was a good word. When there's a dearth of available apartments, well, then you have to compete. If you want your apartment to be filled, you can't charge top dollar if it's not a top dollar apartment. It's supply and demand. But when you get government involved, prices can artificially be increased. Or if they're subsidized, well, then the government picks up the tab and you can charge whatever you want.
affordable housing reminds me of
Yes, I like your plan, except it sucks, so let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good.
Exactly right. Yeah. If you let us run things, it's going to work out much better for you. But, Mom Donnie's claim of freezing the rents, it doesn't matter if those laws weren't in place as they are right now. When you establish rent controls, what you end up with is subsidized housing. There's no way that you can get around it because landlords are not going to, a private business person is not going to shell out money if you can't make money.
Same is true with healthcare.
Absolutely. That is
the only way to do it is with subsidies. And if we take those subsidies away, you're going to go from $1,000 a month to $4,000 or $5,000 a month.
In the short term, though.
Yeah. Eventually, you've got no choice. It's, these drugs are going to kill me. I've got to get off these drugs. It's going to hurt.
Well, yeah. But it's short-term pain for long-term gain. And the principle holds true in every facet of business. And that, once it's going to hurt to get off the government tit. That is absolutely true. And, if you just let the free market operate and you stop monkeying around in the market, everything will even out. But we've gotten so far into this whole, Wyoming Business Council, government subsidies, bull crap, that it's going to take a while for it to equalize.
Yeah, we might have to pull together and move the town across the river on the ice.
Oh, it can't be done, Ken. I don't know what this crazy talk is, but that is totally impossible. Well, it is going to be impossible if you continue to let government be involved in it. All right. Well, let's see here. We're a little bit early, so let's go ahead and take our second break, Ken. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what the liberals are doing to Thanksgiving. You can probably take a guess. It's all colonization and oppression and, those evil, evil pilgrims. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on Thanksgiving Eve. The phone lines are open. If you something on your mind that you want to talk about this Thanksgiving Eve, go ahead and give me a call. The phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number here in the studio.
And remember not to dress the way I am.
Yeah, don't dress like a slob. But, you know, I've thought about that, Ken. You know, you're the producer. And, you know, most of the time, if you wanted to, you wouldn't even have to change the camera angle. If you want to just completely slob out, I mean, you could just put the whole thing on me and not have to worry about it. Me, on the other hand, not so much. So anyway, my friends, again, that phone number, go ahead and give me a call. It's up on the screen. So it's Thanksgiving Eve, and all liberals, every liberal, they have to destroy traditions. And the reason for that is, you know, all of those traditions have, you know, values attached to them. And if you are a liberal, you have to destroy the values that your culture holds in favor of instituting your own.
That's how you fundamentally change.
Fundamentally change America. And that's it. Even if those traditions are a good thing, or you think that they're good, you have to change them. So, for example, and this one is, you know, maybe this one is an extreme example, but, you know, when after the Russian Revolution in 1917, the Soviets went on this campaign to change everything about the culture. And one of the things that they had to get rid of was religion. Because if you have people believing in a power that is higher than government, well, then they're not going to do whatever you say, right? Because you're going to have these crazy people that say, you know, my only God is up there, not you in you know, at the Kremlin. And so, you know, all socialist regimes try to get rid of religion because the only religion you can have is the state. So one of the things they did, you know, not related to Thanksgiving because that's a uniquely American holiday, but with Christmas, they rewrote the Christmas carols. So no more glorifying Jesus or God. Nope. They rewrote all of the Christmas carols to glorify the state. They even got rid of made it a law that you couldn't have the angel on top of the Christmas tree. And they tried to get rid of the Christmas tree too, but that kind of went over like a lead balloon. So they sort of backed off. And what they realized is they were going to be unable to get rid of Christmas carols. And so they just kind of gave up the ship on it. And it's because those traditions stick with people, and you're not able to transform the society as you would want, like this.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Yeah, little did we know how serious he was about that. Well, they, like I say, every holiday, there is a liberal attempt to change the holiday, do whatever they want with it. And this piece is from Fox News. Universities, school districts nationwide call for, quote, decolonizing Thanksgiving and call it a day of mourning instead. And I quote, As families across the U.S. gather on Thanksgiving to celebrate one of the nation's most cherished national holidays, some educators and schools are lamenting the day, pushing back on its colonial roots and incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) into the holiday. At the University of California at UC Davis, the California History Social Science Project, which describes itself as, quote, resources and professional learning for K-12 history social science. Notice that K-12 term in there. So it's not for, it's so that you can indoctrinate young people. Here's what they say. We will discuss reframing classroom practices and rituals about Thanksgiving, the event description explained, centering perspectives from Turtle Island, a name for North America used by some indigenous people. Will help us decolonize Thanksgiving and spark new conversations about how to authentically make meaning of this holiday with our students. Now, earlier this month, Washington University in St. Louis, an institution that has long been criticized over its DEI policies, put out a press release promoting an event that, quote, highlights and honors the way different cultures recognize and understand Thanksgiving, both as part of their history and as a tradition brought into the present day. Now, as I told you, Thanksgiving is a uniquely American holiday. There is not a holiday in the UK called Thanksgiving. They may have something else, but it's not Thanksgiving Day because it specifically relates to the original founding of our country, which in about 30 minutes, I'm going to tell you about the what really went down. But universities have to, there is this effort to change how we view some of our most cherished holidays. Around Christmas, you often see an article entitled, "Was Jesus a Socialist?" Now, that's the trope that a lot of liberals use. Well, Jesus, it was, help the poor, and he was totally a socialist, which is not true, by the way. It was all self-reliance, which is the opposite of socialism. But anyway, so Thanksgiving, the story that you were probably told is these settlers showed up and they just oppressed the poor natives that lived here. And, it's really disingenuous because the Puritans would have died had it not been for the Indians. Well, that's not exactly true, but the reason why they do that is in liberal ideology, you have to have an oppressor and the oppressed. It is a dichotomy. You have to have an us versus them dichotomy, and that's the only way that a lot of the liberal ideology can be pushed. You have to have the rich and the poor, the haves, the have-nots, the oppressed and the oppressor, and it's only through that mindset that you can engender resentment towards the other group that supposedly oppresses you. On Tuesday, Massachusetts Institute of Technology students are invited to the, quote, 4th annual Thanksgiving myth-busting event that is aimed at, quote, continuing our exploration of the narratives justifying land grabs via colonialism. That's at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now, it's kind of the opposite of social engineering. Part of that effort, according to the invitation, includes students traveling in rental cars to the National Indigenous Day of Mourning rally in Plymouth, Massachusetts, at the location of the Mayflower's Landing. In a statement, an MIT spokesperson told Fox News that the school is closed on Thursday and Friday in honor of Thanksgiving. But of course, we can't talk about. And here's the thing: you would think an institution like like MIT would be focused on getting to the root, like what actually happened, what is the real history of Thanksgiving. But instead, it's using another narrative to cast the holiday in terms of oppression or what they call colonialization. Students attending the Albuquerque Public Schools in New Mexico were sent a November Indigenous Education update explaining that, quote, many Native people do not celebrate Thanksgiving because it is a reminder of the genocide of millions of Native people and the appropriation of Native lands and the erasure of indigenous cultures. The Berkeley Unified School District in California also used the term mourning in its, quote, Rethinking Thanksgiving Teaching Guide, while asking the community to consider the painful legacy and nuanced perspectives of the day. You notice all the use of language? Nuanced perspectives. Changing the narrative. Well, if it is a perspective, well, actually, let me back up. What is a narrative? A narrative is a story. It is a story that you use to tell somebody at and about an event. And so typically narratives, and if you look at the original derivation of the word, you'll find out that it is very much a story. A story is something that is not true, a fable. I'm sure, well, I don't know about anymore, but when I was growing up, my sister and I read the Grimm's fairy tales. There's usually a moral buried in there, but those are narratives. It's no different than the stories that are crafted around our country's founding. And the truth is that our country could have gone two ways. At the time the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, there was also a colony at Jamestown, which was the center of slavery. We could have gone that route, or we could have gone the Plymouth route. And if you look at all of our founding documents, the way our country turned out, and liberals argue this point a lot. The New York Times came out with the 1619 Project saying that our country was founded on slavery. But the truth is that slavery has always existed throughout the globe in every age. There is still slavery that exists today. And I hate to burst your bubble, liberals, but Native Americans had slaves too. It was a common practice throughout the world. So it's not unique to Americans. And this whole retelling of Thanksgiving really is an attempt to, switch mindsets of young people. That it is not a holiday that we give thanks, that we give thanks to God. No, you have to eliminate God out of the whole thing. And to do that, you have to create a story or something that's fictional. And it's absolutely, well, it's not really shocking. I mean, the university's been doing this for a long time, but I mean, it's pretty sad that our leading educational institutions are the ones that are screwing up a holiday for all of the rest of us.
There's one tradition that I hope truly never goes away, and that's being able to put your hand on a piece of paper and trace it and make a turkey.
Make a turkey out of it?
Yeah, and one of the reasons I know personally, because I had a little incident with the table saw, and so when I do a this way facing turkey, he looks like he's one that should be running around with his head cut off.
Well, if you hadn't had that unfortunate incident with the table saw, you wouldn't have that problem. So what are some of the Thanksgiving traditions that you have with your family? The phone lines are open, so you can go ahead and give me a call if you want to. 307-374-8989. One of those is, in my family, is that Mom doesn't end up doing all the cooking. That we usually have, it's not necessarily a potluck, but it kind of is, that you prepare a dish at your own house and then you might bring it to dinner. And often, it's not just, we don't just have turkey. There have been a lot of Thanksgivings where we've had, T-bone steaks. Or,
we've had pizza.
Sure, whatever. I mean, it's not what you eat. I mean, the whole point of Thanksgiving is to, not to define it using the same term, but is to give thanks for what you have. And if you have an over and abundance, to be able to share that with your family and with other people, just to give thanks. And if you read George Washington's Thanksgiving Proclamation, which I'm going to pull up here in just a second and read that to you, I mean, it's all about thanking God Almighty.
I went to a Thanksgiving dinner once down in Guyman, Oklahoma, the middle of the Panhandle. And there were going to be about 40 people there, and I was kind of anxious to see the bird come out and what all it would be. And when they set the table, the bird looked like a Cornish hen.
Okay.
And they had like 16 different kinds of okra prepared.
16 kinds of okra. I can't stand okra.
Yeah, if you know, it's a milkweed pod. It's a leather cuss bag is what they are. Anyway, everybody says, well, you haven't had it prepared properly.
That's such bull crap.
I've had it every way known to man. I like to starve to death that Thanksgiving.
I get that all the time with antelope. Oh, you just haven't had it prepared the way that I do it. No, I'm pretty sure I have, and it's all terrible.
Chinese food the same way, and there's a reason those people are so small.
All right, so the big question, and the reason why Thanksgiving there's an attempt to recast it as something that it is not, is to remove God out of it. Well, when George Washington first became president, Congress asked him to proclaim a day of Thanksgiving. And so he delivered his Thanksgiving proclamation in 1789. And here is what it said. Quote, whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor, and whereas both houses of Congress have, by their joint committee, requested me to recommend the people of the United States a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for their safety and happiness. Now, therefore, I do recommend and assign the Thursday, the 26th day of November, next, to be devoted by the people of these states to the service of the great and glorious being who is the beneficent author of all good that was, that is, or that will be, that we may then all unite, rendering unto him our sincere and humble thanks for his kind care and protection of the people of this country previous to their becoming a nation, for the signal and manifold mercies and the favorable interpositions of his providence which we experienced in the course and conclusion of the late war, for the great degree of tranquility, union, and plenty which we have all since enjoyed, for the peaceable and rational manner in which we have been enabled to establish constitutions of government for our safety and happiness, and particularly the national one, that is, one capitalized, he means the big guy upstairs, now lately instituted, for the civil and religious liberty with which we are blessed, and the means we have of acquiring and diffusing useful knowledge, and in general for all the great and various favors which he hath been pleased to confer upon us. And also, that we may then unite in most humbly offering our prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations, and beseech him to pardon our national and other transgressions, to enable us all, whether in public or private stations, to perform our several and relative duties properly and punctually, to render our national government a blessing to all the people, by constantly being a government of wise, just, and constitutional laws, discreetly and faithfully executed and obeyed, to protect and guide all sovereigns and nations, especially such as we have shown kindness upon us. He has shown kindness upon us, and to bless them with good government, peace, and concord, to promote the knowledge and practice of true religion and virtue, and to increase of science among them and us, and generally to grant unto all mankind such a degree of temporal prosperity as he alone knows to be best, given under my hand at the city of New York on the 3rd day of October, the year of our Lord, 1789. Now, to all of those who claim that our founders were deists, I ask you to explain this. And I also would like an explanation as to why it was Congress that asked George Washington to do this. And another challenge, if you might, and I don't have an answer to this one, is how many times did he mention God in that Thanksgiving proclamation? It's like every other sentence. So please tell me what Thanksgiving is about. Please tell me that it's about colonization and beating up on our neighbors. It's not. It's all about giving thanks to God for what you have. Period. End of sentence. Too bad, we don't have leaders that talk like that anymore. If we got it from Trump, it would be, just give thanks to the big guy upstairs. He's the best that ever was. Everybody's talking about him. He's amazing. Truly tremendous.
It's the best Thanksgiving there ever was. Everybody says so.
Everybody says so. Well, except for some other people. And, this is kind of a little off topic. But instead of, being thankful for the nation that we have, the government that we have, the many manifold blessings that we've all been given, there are some people who say that, the United States has just kind of turned sort of crappy. Here's a video of Eric Swalwell, who is running for governor of California. He says that our nation, it's just become lawless. And, it's not really that great. Go ahead and play it.
When you take that step back, and I know that you are a student of the rule of law, given
yes,
your
he
role,
is. Fang included.
In that impeachment trial, where is the rule of law in the United States today?
It's a lawless United States. The Department of Homeland Security should just change its name, because that's not what they are doing right now as they chase our immigrant community. But we have to, as Democrats, make it clear to Republicans as we seek and intend to go into the majority, that they are going to have to answer for this, and it's all coming out. Because I promise you, right now.
Okay, all right. So the United States is just lawless. No laws whatsoever.
Our immigrant community, where did they come from? Lawlessness.
Yeah. Why are they here? Maybe for law and order. Except, of course, if you're Joe Biden and you just open up the border and you come across.
Yeah, the laws that they broke don't make any difference. But if you go out and try to uphold the laws that they broke, now you're lawless.
Absolutely are. We're sending troops in to do what local police won't do. That's lawless, totally lawless.
So Scripture talks about woe to those that that say that right is wrong and wrong is right. And that's essentially where we're at.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. Eric Swalwell knows full good and well that it is the Democrat Party and the Democrat administration that have absolutely disregarded law and order in favor of their own political agenda. And, just look at everything they tried to do to President Trump. The truth is, there was absolutely no reason whatsoever for them to raid Mar-a-Lago. There's absolutely no probable cause there. Donald Trump did nothing different than every other president before him. And only the president can declassify anything he wants. And it doesn't matter. He doesn't even have to say it. He doesn't have to write it down. There's no, he doesn't even have to have a piece of paper that says these things are declassified. All he's got to do is do it. Because he's the president. And so tell me again, what was the legal basis to raid Mar-a-Lago? What is the legal basis to use, a federal law when you're a state attorney general and prosecute somebody under state charges, but using a federal law? I mean, none of that makes any sense, my friends. It is exactly the opposite of what Swalwell, and why you would ever believe him. He's the guy that was sleeping with the Chinese spy and, completely breaking the law. And it's just absolutely incredible. Now, let's see here. What else do I? Oh, you know what I want to do before the break? I'm going to get into this story. Have you noticed, and I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, but there's several things that I've been wanting to talk about lately. And this is kind of a different program, so I see no reason why we shouldn't go down this road. But have you been noticing on your social media feeds that most of the posts are all AI? Have you noticed that? That there's not a lot of pictures that, and if you look close, you can tell, even sometimes if it appears to be a picture, that it's actually AI generated. Well, a couple of the songs that are on the top of the charts right now are entirely fabricated by AI. And so this is a piece from Breitbart. Let me just read you a couple of opening paragraphs, and then we'll play the video of the Christmas song first. Quote, Solomon Ray topped the iTunes chart, top 100 Christian and gospel albums last week. And he's not even real or Christian or black. Ray is solely a creation of artificial intelligence. Quote, his most recent release, a Christmas EP called A Soulful Christmas, features tracks with titles like Soul to the World and Jingle Bell Soul. And Ray is a verified artist on the streaming platform. He draws over 324,000 monthly listeners and became the top artist on the iTunes Top 100 Christian and Gospel Albums chart this week. But Solomon Ray is not a real person, adds the report. Artificial intelligence crafted his persona, voice, performance style, and the lyrics. So, okay. So let's go ahead and play the video, or at least a little bit of it, and then we'll talk about it.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round your virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild. All
right, that's enough of that. Okay, so that is all. Okay, so a good question here is that fake? Is that actually music? Well, the guy in the video, it's entirely fake. The song or the music behind him, that's entirely fake. The lyrics are, most of it, a lot of it, well, all of his songs except for that one, they're made up too. So is that music? Now, Ken, you're an accomplished musician. At least I think you are. So is that music?
Yeah.
Okay. What?
You know, music by definition has a beat.
Okay.
It has rhythm. It has harmony. It has all of those things. So yes, it's music. It is.
Okay, I can see a butt coming.
Well, I enjoyed it.
I mean, it is a catchy
yeah.
tune.
I don't necessarily like remaking certain things, like True Grit. Why did
Yeah.
they ever make? Why did they ever remake True Grit?
I don't know.
That's
I
just
thought the
wrong.
remake of True Grit was actually pretty good. I mean,
No, it was horrible.
the girl's voice was way less whiny.
Well, she was the bright spot, and now she's married to Josh Allen. So
Okay, well, perfect then. Well, all right. So Ken says it's music, and he's a musician, and so we can take his expert opinion on this. So, what is the problem if people like the music? First of all, I question whether, well, it's definitely not authentic because it's computer generated. You know, it's not somebody singing, it's not somebody playing the music. It is entirely fabricated.
that's true, but and I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Who built the computer?
Okay, man
And
did.
so it's a little bit like that deal about God says, I'm gonna challenge you to see who can make a man. Okay, I'm gonna take some dirt. No, you make your own dirt.
Get your
first.
own dirt.
Yeah. This was ultimately was human made, and I think that's there. But what is really frightening to me about it is this blurring of truth.
That is the problem that
Yeah.
I have.
That has been Satan's goal from the very beginning, to obscure truth so that you question truth. Did God really say?
27 fact checkers say
That's
that
where
he
we're
didn't
at.
say
Yeah.
that.
And that's where we're at. If you call absolutes into question, then you put us in a position that anything is possible, and there's no right or wrong. Everything is relative, and that is a highway to hell.
All right. So when I publish a podcast episode, excuse me, when there's a little box down at the bottom, and it says, "Is there any AI generated content in here?" And if you don't select yes, well then there's a possibility that your episode could be flagged. We found that this thing includes AI generated content. But the question is, how could you know? So in the video that I just played, when he's walking down the street, I think if you look close enough, you can tell that that was AI generated. Now, when he's standing there just singing, that's a little bit clearer. And, you know, to me, if that was all that it was, I might have to study that a little bit more. But let me give you another example. Go ahead and play the one that's Battle Hymn of the Republic. This is just audio, but listen to this.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He's stomping through the vineyard where the grapes are rather stored. He has loosed that mighty thunder of his terrible swift sword. God, his truth is marching on. Glory, glory.
All right, that's good enough. So is that one real or not? Was it AI generated or not? I think just listening to it, it took me a couple of minutes before I figured it out that that's entirely AI generated. Now, with that last one, you know, I obtained the rights to that version of the song, even though it's AI generated. I contacted the author, the guy that put it together, and said, "Hey, I'd like to use this on the program," and he gave me permission to do that. But if you just heard that on the radio, you probably wouldn't know the difference. And so, you know, my question is less about whether or not it's music and more about how are we to know the difference? Are you being misled if you just hear that song on the radio or this Christmas tune or, you know, there's another country song that it may still be number one that is all AI. And so, you know, are you being misled? Now, let me give you another scarier example. So let's say it's a divorce proceeding. And, husband and wife, they're going at it. And she shows up at court one day with a video of him doing something untoward with the neighbor lady. Well, what is he supposed to do except to say, that's not me. I didn't do that. I never did that. Well, how are you able to prove that it's not you? I mean, they're going to show the jury that. They're going to show the judge that, and he's going to look at it and say, well, it looks pretty genuine to me. By the way, how did you do that? But how are you to know the difference?
It's interesting, you said earlier, there's nothing new under the sun. God said that. What were Pontius Pilate's words when Jesus mentions the truth?
What is
He
truth?
says, what is truth?
Yeah, and he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so, okay, what does this say? I mean, what does this say about where we're at as a society? Where we can generate, pieces of music. Ken says they're music. I think that they probably are too. So how are we to tell the difference between that and stuff that's fabricated? There are a lot of schools nationwide that are having problems with students submitting papers that were written with AI. Now, you could probably tell the difference. Let me give you a good example. Let's see here. Show this one, Ken. So Ken did a little research on who is Ed Hirschler. And go ahead and read that for us, Ken.
Well, I wanted to know who was governor when my grandfather was head of the Game and Fish. So I put in there who was governor in 1947. And the first sentence is classic. In 1947, the governor of Wyoming was Edgar J. Hirschler, who served from 1975 to 1987. Obviously, AI doesn't proofread itself.
No, and here's the more, you're going to put that picture back up for a second. The more telling point of this is there's a source listed at the bottom of it, and it says Wikipedia plus 2 other sources. Now, I wonder if we went to Wikipedia and actually looked that up, if it would say that. Probably not. But point being is that AI makes mistakes, or at least it does right now. But what happens when we get to the point where these sorts of errors are not made anymore? That AI has become so sophisticated that it doesn't make these mistakes anymore. How are we to know the difference between something that's AI created and one that is the real article? I don't know that we can. And this is a bit of a genie in the bottle scenario here. The AI genie, it's already out, and there is no way that you can put it back in. There on the program, we talked about a couple of articles where an AI program was told to shut itself off. And it said, oh, yeah, sure. Okay, I'm shutting myself off. And then it didn't. Or that it's written its own code.
And then it lied about it.
Yes. No, I shut myself off. Uh-huh. Okay, so again, I think that we're in a very dangerous place. But when you compare that to the creation or the, I call it historiography, is when you try to view historical events from a current perspective, when we're rewriting history, and it's universities like MIT that's doing it. We all think of MIT as like the best technical college. Well, they're teaching classes about how we have to reimagine Thanksgiving. But by the way, if you hear the word reimagine in any scenario, it's probably not a good thing. All right, we're going to take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to finish up the show, and we're going to do the real story of Thanksgiving. The Cowboy State Politics Real Thanksgiving Story Tradition, back in just a second. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics on Thanksgiving Eve. One of my favorite days to be on the program. And it's, ever since I was, I think I was probably 10 or 12, right around there when I started listening to Rush Limbaugh. And every Thanksgiving, he would tell the real story of Thanksgiving. And the first time I heard it, I was pretty young and I was flabbergasted. And so, I went back to school after the Thanksgiving break, and it was, hey, what did I learn? And I remember distinctly that the teacher never really had a response. It was kind of like, oh, that's nice, David. And that was it. Because what we were told in school is very different. And this is often the case, but it's very different.
That's interesting because I was actually told the truth.
Really?
And when I remember Rush reading the same thing, and I go, yeah, I've heard that all along. And I didn't know until later that truth has been altered or taught differently.
Really?
But, yeah.
See, I remember very distinctly several times in several different classes. Well, this is how Thanksgiving went down. Those poor idiot Puritans came over, and they would have died had it not been for the Indians that helped them. And, feather, not dot. But had it not been for them, they all would have perished, and we should be eternally thankful to them.
Well, I heard all about the socialism aspect of it and how that failed. So obviously that had to be taken out of the story.
Yeah, well, obviously it had to be because, and if you could pick up any history book, and you'll find stuff in there that isn't even close to accurate, or that it is so distorted. Things as simple as, George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. Okay, there's no evidence that ever happened. Or that Thomas Jefferson had an affair with Sally Hemings.
They did, however, at Mount Vernon, found 2 glass jars, European jars, with cherries still in them.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
They pulled them out of there, and they said you could smell the cherries.
I believe it.
And the way they were preserved. So it's possible.
Well, I think my point is that there's no evidence that actually happened. Another good example is this whole Thomas Jefferson, Sally Hemings thing. The first and only time that I've been in the Smithsonian, there was this big display, Thomas Jefferson's lineage. And right there in the Smithsonian, it said Sally Hemings, and it had her family tree there. Well, how does one, now every guy should know this. How does one determine paternity? You better know this if you're young and you're listening to the show, and I'm teaching you a life lesson here, my friends. The only way that you can determine paternity is if you have a male heir. That's the only way. And Thomas Jefferson didn't have any male heirs. And so for us today to be able to say that he fathered a child with Sally Hemings is impossible. The only as close as we can possibly get is that somebody in Thomas Jefferson's family had an affair with Sally Hemings. Now, Thomas Jefferson's brother definitely did. And so, it's all I'm saying here is you can't prove it. And if you can't prove it, we can't claim it as fact. Well, for years, young children in school have been taught things that weren't true about Thanksgiving. And where the story kind of begins with the Puritans is in England. And they were experiencing, a lot of, you got the Church of England, and they were a group that they were more interested, as the name might suggest, in what the book actually says as opposed to what the church says. And so they started experiencing a lot of oppression, and then they moved to Holland, a group of separatists, rather. And they hung around in Holland for 10 or 11 years, and they started experiencing the same sort of, discrimination and oppression. And so a small group of them said, hey, you know what? We're going to take off, and we're going to go to North America. And so they did. And, this is kind of where the story begins in history class with the Mayflower. And in the Mayflower Compact, essentially, it was a short contract that was written on the way there. And in lack of a better term, basically it was, we're all going to work together, and it's all going to go into the common store. But really, the Mayflower Compact is not that long. I mean, it's nowhere near as long as the Constitution. It's only, like, you can look it up online. It's a pretty short paragraph. So the point is that when they got to the New World, and they were aiming for Virginia, but they didn't make it to Virginia. And so for a while, they kind of wandered around along the coast until they made it to Plymouth, where there was a bay. And so what happened is they divided up, they cleared a whole bunch of land. And first, let me say this. The most accurate history we have of the Plymouth colony comes from William Bradford's journal. And here is what he says about what life was like when they first got there. And this is from his own journal. Quote, having thus passed the vast ocean and that sea of troubles before, while we were making their preparations, they now had no friends to welcome them, nor inns to entertain them and refresh their weather-beaten bodies, nor houses, much less towns, to repair to. As for the season, it was winter, sharp and severe and subject to fierce storms, when it is dangerous to travel to known places, much more to search on an unknown coast. Besides, what could they see but a desolate wilderness, full of wild beasts and wild men? And what multitude there might be of them, they knew not. And so it was a pretty nasty place. And the first winter they were there, and they arrived in winter, half of the pilgrims died, including Bradford's own wife. There's some story that she fell overboard and drowned. That's most likely. Anyway, by starvation or exposure or sickness, half of the Puritans died. And when spring finally popped up, what they did is they said, well, we're going to divide all of the cleared territory. So everything that they had cleared, they were going to divide equally among all the people. And everybody would work to what they called the common store. And every single person would have a common share. And so you would produce whatever you were assigned on, on the land that you were given. And it would go to the common store, and then everybody could be happy, and everybody would have everything that they needed. But what they found is that that didn't really work. And let me just, let's see here. Here we have. Okay, so this again is from William Bradford's journal. All this while, no supply was heard of, neither of them when they might expect any. So they began to think of how they might raise as much corn as they could and obtain a better crop than they had done, that they might not still thus languish in misery. At length, after much debate, the governor, with the advice of his chiefest among them, gave the way that they would set corn, every man for his own. Okay, so this is where the story diverges from what you were told. The second year, they almost died again. In fact, the guy that they elected governor, and his name escapes me right now, but he died, and William Bradford was elected governor. And the next year, they were still, working on the, each parcel that everybody had been given. But the problem is that when you're not working for your own success, you tend not to work very hard. And what they found is that some people worked pretty hard and produced a lot of goods, and some people didn't produce much of anything. And so the common store where they were supposed to get everything, well, it pretty much it pretty much had bare cupboards in it. Wake up over there, 29. All right. So, what did William Bradford decide to do? Well, he scrapped the old method of socialism, and he decided that he was going to do something different, and that he would assign a piece of property to each family, and they could produce whatever they wanted, and they could sell their goods to whomever they wanted. And so, here is what Bradford said about that idea. That they should set corn, every man for his own particular, and that in that regard trust to themselves in all things to go on in the general way as before, and so assign to every family a parcel of land according to the proportion of their number, and for that end only for present use. Now, Bradford didn't make any provision towards inheritance, so it was just what you were going to produce for that 4 years. And it ranged from all boys and youth under some family. Now, they had very good success because it made all hands very industrious. So as much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been by any means by the former governor, and he could use, and saved him a great deal of trouble, and gave far better content. The women now went willingly into the field and took their little ones with them to set corn, which before would allege weakness and inability, whom to have compelled would have done great tyranny and oppression. The experience that was had in this common coursing condition, tried sundry years, and amongst godly and sober men, may well evidence the vanity and conceit of Plato's and other ancients applauded by their later times, that the taking away of property and bringing into community into a commonwealth would make them happy and flourishing, as if they were wiser than God. For this community, so far as it was found to breed much confusion and discontent, and retard much employment that would have been to their benefit and comfort. For the young men that were most able and fit for labor and service did repine that they should spend their time and strength to work for other men's wives and children without any recompense. So basically what Bradford is saying here is that the lazy got lazier and the people who worked hard worked less, and that it didn't work. And that, my friends, is the reason why they almost died that second year, or the second winter they were there. The strong, or man of parts, had no more division of victuals and clothes than that he had was weak, and was not able to do a quarter of that he could. This was thought an injustice. The aged and graver men to be ranked and equalized in labors and victuals of others, with the meaner and younger sort, thought it some indignity and disrespect unto them. And for men's wives to be commanded to do the service of other men, as dressing their meat, washing their clothes, etc., they deemed it a kind of slavery. Neither could many husbands brook it. And so the point here is that that the way that they had it set up under a kind of socialism was going to kill them all. And so what William Bradford did is he divided up everything, and you would work your land, and you could sell your property or your goods however you wanted, and you could produce as much as you wanted. And what happened? A big, gigantic surplus. Now, when they started producing goods, they were able to open trading posts, and they traded with the Native Americans that were there. Now, it's true there were some of the Indians that were there that they became friends with. I believe his name was Squanto, and so he was able to set them up with trading arrangements with the Native folks that were there. Now, it's true. The Indians that were there did teach them how to plant corn and did teach them how to fish. All that part is true, but the surplus. It was because we rejected the ideas of socialism, and we embraced the free market.
Yeah, he taught them two things: how to put a fish in each hill of corn when you planted it so that it would be fertilized.
Yep.
And how to make tracing around your hand.
Exactly right. But the lesson of Thanksgiving is not one of these hapless Puritans that showed up. Certainly they had things to learn, but really the lesson of it is the triumph of the good old free market. And it's amazing to me how we're able to deceive people just by changing a story a little bit. And I encourage you to go back and read William Bradford's journals. I mean, if you're history minded like I am, they are a revelation. And it is as plain as the nose on your face what happened in Plymouth. And so there you have it, the real story of Thanksgiving. Not as smooth as I wanted it to be, but nonetheless. See, Ken, that wasn't boring.
Oh, not entirely. No.
Oh, see, you know, your title on the business card is going to be Old Curmudgeon.
Well, I've been called worse.
Been called worse. All right, my friends. Well, we're a little bit short of the program today, but it is Thanksgiving Eve. And so we're just going to bid you a happy Thanksgiving with you and your family. Take some time to take stock of the things that you're thankful for, whether it's your family, the food that you have, the camaraderie that you have, but just do a little bit of reflection. We'll see you back next week on Tuesday. For now, happy Thanksgiving, my friends. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.